Hello, this is Laura O'Brien at the Irish Pagan School YouTube channel, and I'm here today with the lovely Tara Tine, our very own Ditch Witch, and we're going to talk about herbalism, foraging, ditch witchery, and just everything that Tara is bringing to the table. She's one of our teachers at the Irish Pagan School, so we will have a quick look at our classes at the end. But for now, Tara, can you explain to me the concept of ditch witchery? Like, what is it, and how did you come up with it?
This is something I'm always chipping away at because I do get asked it quite a bit, and the answer is quite different every time. But I was talking to friends about it yesterday, and I think the best way to describe what I feel to be the concept of the ditch witch is that I've always sort of had to live between worlds. When I was born in Canada, in the absolute northernmost reaches of Canada, and came back to Ireland when I was one, lived in this big Victorian pub in the centre of Dundalk town, and had no real nature around me to speak of at all. We had a concrete yard out the back, and my mum used to make planters and plant lovely flowers into it. And that was okay, it was nice. I lived next to a river which was extremely polluted as well, but from way up high in my bedroom I couldn't really see the pollution at the time, but it was always like it was within my reach, but not quite. It was just outside of what I could access as a child, really. And then total culture shock when I think I was about 9, and we moved out to Inniskeen, County Monaghan. Well, I was actually on the County Louth side. I was just dropped into the middle of the countryside, and I didn't know what to do with it. I never climbed trees. I never rolled around in the muck. I didn't know the names of most of what was growing around me. My father planted fruit trees, so took a bit of interest in that because there was tasty goods to be got from the trees. But I again, it was sort of, I was surrounded by it, but I didn't know how to reach out and engage with it. And it was only after moving back to Dundalk again when I was about 17 that I started to really feel the lack of nature. I didn't really miss it until I didn't have it anymore. And um
And we've lost Tara. So Tara is coming to us from the wilds of Leitrim currently. So I'm hoping that she'll be able to pop back in. But if not, we will do a part two. Tara, are you back with us? You're literally coming to us from the ditch up in Leitrim currently.
literally County Leitrim now these days. So we need to talk to the government about the internet infrastructure out here. But in the meantime, this is what we've got. This is what we've got to work with, folks. But yeah, so I think it was really then as I got older, this longing to get back to nature. I really just I started to find the town more and more restrictive around me, and it was in my early 20s then I was lucky enough to go and live in Carlingford in County Louth, and I had the mountain and I had the loch, which actually it was coastal. It was actually the sea, but it was Carlingford Loch,
Mhm.
and it had its own little weather system. And I mean, the minute I landed in the village, I could feel the energy of the place, and I just wanted to run straight through it or to it. And so I went into the village and I looked for a way to get up the mountain because they hadn't got a load of signs for walking trails, or at least it wasn't obvious to me where exactly you were meant to go. And I actually just started at one point crawling through ditches. I got up a certain point and I went, this isn't going to stop me. I don't see gates, I don't see paths, I don't see any easy way through here, but I am going up that mountain. It kills me. So I got a little bit acquainted with how to get up the mountain, and yeah, I think it was probably St. Patrick's Day that same year. I had planned to maybe go to Crow Patrick and see what the whole thing was about, but having recently moved house, that wasn't going to work out. So I says, well, sure, I'll make my pilgrimage up the mountain instead and see what Paddy has to say to me, say for himself, really. So I started out all cocky, completely inadequately dressed for a hike up quite a steep mountainside. And I got to the saddle of the mountain, and I should have been happy with that, but I wasn't. I wanted to get to the very peak. And so I started practically bouldering up lumps of rock to get up to this place. And I found myself in a really soppy, sharp, I mean, I was barefoot by that stage because my little crappy fake leather pennies boots weren't taking me very far. These were hung around my neck, and I'm stood like shin deep in shuck water, essentially at the very top of this mountain, and the heather was scratching my feet, and old bits and pieces of gorse and ferns, and it was just this really wild place. And I realized very quickly I didn't know how to get back down again. The way I had come up wasn't exactly going to be conducive to going back down, so I had to find a different way down. I ended up climbing down the mountain in a stream because I thought, well, this stream definitely goes back to the main one that feeds into Carling. So I'm in it, and there's all these pointy rocks. I'm probably bleeding at this stage. I definitely had at least one cry by that point as well. And by the time I managed to get out of the river and get back to something I recognized, which was the forest, then again, I'm nearly on my bum sliding down. And the mountain completely kicked my ass. And I feel like I went up the mountain that day, very naive, hippie type girl from Dundalk town, and I came down that mountain a ditch witch. And I've fallen through ditches ever since. And also I feel it's particularly apt because I'm massive into foraging too, and I suppose maybe that was something that came from living in the country, where if you found damsons or you found gooseberries, that was a big treat, and you'd tell everyone about that. So with the foraging as well, then I mean all the best stuff grows in ditches, and other foragers out there might disagree with me, but that's where I go to get happy. And obviously then I started discovering, as I've done with the YouTube thing, and started doing more and more research, I discovered what liminal and magical places the ditches were considered to be, even within Irish culture. I knew hedge witchery had been a thing, and I didn't feel particularly drawn to the kinds of people who were using that term at the time. We're talking now probably, what is this, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
So I really felt that sort of, coming from Ireland, Ditch Witch just felt a lot more appropriate. And then I started discovering that the ditches between parishes were a great place to go if you wanted to cast a curse on somebody, or if you wanted to remove a curse from somebody. And there were actually Pisho doctors who would work with these ditches, and sometimes then if you got a double ditch on the border of a parish, that was even more powerful again. So I wasn't the only one that sort of felt that there were these places, and I thought, yeah, I found my people, the people who would climb into a ditch to put a curse on somebody. I can get down with those people for sure.
Absolutely.
So I suppose that's really how it goes, Lora, and it's still evolving every single day. I develop more of a relationship with this title I've built for myself. And witch as well, I suppose I'm very much into the going around and picking up what we consider today to be the spooky elements of Irish folklore and the magical elements of mythology, and these are all just things I'm naturally drawn to. So the title witch suits me fine, because I think that's a proper note of caution to give to anybody before they deal with me. They know what they're getting themselves for. So yeah, I hope that answered that.
Absolutely, it does. Absolutely. And I didn't even know that about you, like your background there. I didn't even know you were born in Canada or any of that. So
that's
I'm
an
delighted.
Exclusive your channel, Lora. Okay, I haven't said that to the end. There you go.
Brilliant.
Ditch Witch IPS exclusive.
So, so like, what does your kind of your daily practice look like? You know, do you have anything specifically that you do on like certain days? Do you work with the moon cycles? Do you work with the seasons? Like, you know, what does your actual practice look like, or is it very spontaneous?
It's extremely spontaneous, and the thing that I am most committed to is watching nature itself. Like, nature is my god,
Mm,
essentially.
mm,
um the turn of the seasons, I like to know if it's turning earlier this year than it did last year. I like to know how the wildlife is around me is getting on. And so I'll take a visit to the frog pond. I will spend an hour looking up a new species of plant that I haven't had previous experience with. It's getting to know the place I live like the back of my hand.
mm,
That's my practice for all of that to be known by somebody. I feel I consider myself privileged to be the one who knows these things. My neighbor Paddy's in his 70s, and sometimes he's telling me things about what they thought of some of these species when they were kids. Did they play games? Did they value them? Were things ever picked and eaten? And then I'd be telling him things, and
mm,
he can't get over it. Like, there's a profusion of native wild orchids growing down the lane here, and to me it was like a divine experience, finding them and
mm,
finding that out and be able to tell Paddy. And he's starting to see the magic in the environment I'm living in,
mm,
whereas maybe that had been lost for him before. So it's not that I'm trying to convert Paddy here or anything like that, but to me, I suppose what I'm doing is I'm finding the magic in the environment around me. And I'm constantly learning how to be in better relationship with the environment around me. And I suppose that is mainly what I do. Obviously now Samhain's coming up at time of recording, and I love a bit of Samhain now, I have to say.
yeah.
And yeah, Halloween was my favorite holiday growing up. And I some years I'll do Baltan. I usually always do Imbolg. I'll do something for that because I have worked with Bridget quite a bit over the years. But as far as my relationship with the gods goes, I suppose I haven't felt the need to dedicate myself to anybody. Like,
Mm,
me and Bridget had that thing on for a long time. I made offerings, and I felt like sometimes she was just there to listen. She was there to bless my hearth fire. And in the end, I believe that after many, many years of probably doing kind of a half-assed job of working with her, that she did help me to sort of rebuild my life in a way that's healthier for me.
mm,
But still and all, never really felt the need to dedicate because and I really should stop mentioning fictional characters when I'm talking about these things, but it's a bit like Granny Weatherwax's take for any of the Pratchett fans out there, is that you don't have to go around believing in gods. It'd be like believing in the postman.
yeah.
uh,
They just are.
Start there, the encouragement, they're there, very vibrant, very alive, and absolutely very real to me. It's just I've sort of made that decision that if you must cross paths with them, be respectful, do your best, but otherwise don't go looking. That's just my personal I suppose from the path that I've walked. I tried a lot of things over the years, and I suppose I got myself in trouble too, and it's less trouble I'm looking for now.
Mm,
And it's a
mm,
kind of an easier, quieter life, at least for now. That could all change in the future.
absolutely. Absolutely. And like, you don't have to be dedicated to any gods to practice Irish paganism or, you know, witchcraft or Irish witchcraft or anything like that. Um, Very much the opposite, I would say. You know, witchcraft particularly is very
Yeah.
neutral with regards to the religious side of things.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yes, it's kind of just me going about and doing me things, where I see the need for something to be done. um I'll put my time into it, I'll put my intention into it, and put all my best efforts into it. And sometimes that involves, petitioning a god or some other big energy like that. But sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's just lighting a candle for somebody. I do quite a lot of that.
Yeah.
Because that's sort of that's that rootsy kind of magic that I really am into, is like people make and do with what they have.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And like the other side of it is true as well. You can just as easily practice while being dedicated to a god, and nobody, like, it's just such a personal thing, I think, and these traditions
really
that we have and the energies that we work with, like, as you say, they're just there. You don't have to go believing in them. We can, we can we can tap in if we want to, but we don't have to. And honestly, like, if I could get away without being God bothered, it sounds like an awful peaceful life, Tara.
It's not bad over here, Lora. I wouldn't know how to extract you now, but if ever you need tips on how it goes over this side, I'm here.
Yeah. Like, if you can get away with it, like, definitely choose that, I'd say.
Yeah.
Just from where we're sitting. And not
Definitely
that I don't, I don't mean to say like that, that it's easier what you do or whatever. It's just, it's another level of complication when you're dealing with gods, like, and if you don't have to, don't.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I saw somebody asking there recently about, oh, well, my altar had to be taken down and I can't put it back up. And I went, oh God, it's like the memories at the time when I was going through all of that and how difficult it was. Not having that space. So, even grounding yourself enough to do that kind of work can be difficult when you're being constantly pushed from pillar to post. And sometimes that's part of it. And that's part of a person's journey. But I suppose that was definitely an issue for me a lot over the years as well, is that the gods of the place I was living in changed so regularly. The energies that guarded and guided the places where it was nearly constantly different. So I try to be dynamic. I try to be open-minded. I've really gotten into following the academia end of things now, because so many people have written about these things who they're not there's a lot of people out there who don't talk about practicing at all, but they seem to have such a passion for getting to know the gods. And find that really inspiring too, that just because you're not necessarily dedicating yourself to gods, it doesn't mean you can't actually still get to know them even intimately, and
absolutely,
contribute great work to other people getting to know them as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And feeding the traditions, the way they're like, we're up against a lot. You're mentioning, like, seeing things in groups. I know exactly where that was coming from. I saw the same post, in a group, and like, there's a lot of people who are, coming into those kind of spaces, and which are, well, the ones that we're in anyway. I know you're in a lot more now than me, wider kind of circles, but the ones that we run and the ones that I'm in are very, very focused on the Irish stuff, like, exclusively, and you get a lot of, like, noise from outside, so when people are doing the academic research, studying, whether they're pagan or not, like, it's irrelevant, whether they're dedicated to gods or not. Most of them, I would say, are not, to be perfectly honest. But they're still contributing, they're still in what I would call a kind of a right relationship with the gods, guides, and guardians of Ireland, and the traditions and the culture, and because they're giving back to it. And I think that's what you're picking up on, like,
Absolutely, yeah. It's wonderful. It's a great time to be alive in Ireland. Or, even just learning about Ireland. There's so much going on and so much being brought into, up to the surface and into the light for us all to learn about.
Yeah.
Really wonderful.
Yeah. Because it all had to go underground, didn't it? And it all had to kind of take on, put on different cloaks and be different things. And that's okay too, because it's part of this living tradition, and like, you're talking about St. Patrick and Croagh Patrick, and, like, while that's a very famous Christian pilgrimage, I think you really kind of tapped into it where it's based on much older traditions, like say around Lunasa, like, or the, Bilberry Sunday, like climbing a mountain was the
Yes.
thing to do, and it became the Croagh Patrick thing, and it became the St. Patrick pilgrimage and all the rest of it. But those traditions were going on a hell of a lot longer than Christianity has been in Ireland, so it's all very interesting really to tap
Yeah,
into.
absolutely. Yeah. And there's
Yeah,
no end of it as well. It's
exactly.
a lifetime. Yeah. Bottom of what's going on here.
Exactly. And I really feel like a lot of this stuff, and you really put your finger on it there, like it's all kind of what a time to be alive, like, because as kind of contemporary pagans or just people who are interested in the native spiritual side of things, the pre-Christian side of things, whether that's an academic interest or a personal interest is irrelevant almost.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing now is like it's kind of coming, it's working in cycles, like when Catholicism was the dominant force, when the Catholic Church had colonized our island, as we've discussed many a time, and that was the
Yes.
dominant power. You couldn't talk about paganism. You couldn't talk about, anything pre-Christian because you were being, shamed at the very best. But now
Yes.
there's, it's much more open and things can kind of reset a little bit back to not having to wear those cloaks if they don't want to,
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. There was so much riding on the Catholic Church and their inbuilt system of very subjective morals when the Irish state was founded. That the Catholic Church was sort of used as a way to help Ireland look more morally pure than Britain.
Mm,
We are better. We're as good
mm,
as, if not even better than, our former colonizers.
mm,
And so they kind of let the church run wild, and there's still a lot of work to be done
mm,
in trying to untangle that. And to a certain extent, you can kind of, I would find myself still embracing aspects of the mythology and the archetypes around Christianity because I feel safe to do that now that I've formally defected from the Catholic Church.
mm.
So those were energies that I was raised with, and I wouldn't just throw
Oh,
it with
yeah.
bathwater as far as is concerned. But what I love then is the early Christianity in Ireland, that before this time when the church was used as the great big tool for sweeping it under the rug, that actually it was quite a much more, I think from looking at it, beautiful and organic and artistically focused
Mm,
practice. So there's quite a lot in that there too, and I find myself being very drawn towards, especially like insular Celtic art and
mm,
everything that goes into that. And I loved learning about in school, even where they source those colors from.
mm,
And I suppose that's all come back right now that I'm interested in things like plant dyes and
mm,
inks and all of that. But it's a tower, that you, as you say, Laura, it goes in cycles, that you'd
mm,
nearly run the risk of just going, "Oh, anything got to do with, any era of Christianity in this country is wrong and horrible, and you shouldn't be thinking about it." But actually, what I love about the culture in this country is that it is so all embracing that you
mm,
can draw from that, and nobody's gonna castigate you for throwing away what didn't
mm.
suit you and didn't serve
Exactly.
you. So yeah, yeah. Sorry, I just can't leave Christianity go without going on some kind of rant.
But you and I have had this talk certainly before, where it's not Christianity that we actually have the problem with at all. It's beautiful. It's a mystical religion, and spirit as a spiritual practice. It has a lot going for it.
Yes.
But it is specifically the criminal cult organization that is the Catholic Church here in Ireland that I would have a problem with, and I think you're very much on the same page.
Yeah, well, it's at the forefront of my mind because I have to say there is an element now going around and starting to ruin it for everybody. Like St. Bridget's Shrine there up at Faughart, at Bridget's birthplace in Faughart in County Louth. Um, it's generally accepted that that was a much older pagan shrine before the Catholic Church came along and put their stamp all over the place. And now pagan ceremonies that are taking place, now granted, I know some of these ceremonies that were happening were drawing on cultures from outside of Ireland, so that's another matter. It's neither here nor there. There are Christian fundamentalist groups. I've seen very disturbing videos on YouTube from the groups that are going there specifically to interrupt and disrupt events like that from happening. And I don't think Faughart is the only place it's been happening. So there are fundamentalist right-wing Christians out there mobilizing and actually starting to really come out of their shell again and make themselves known. And so I would just, for anybody who is kind of into that Christian aspect, just please be wary of that.
Absolutely.
And also try not to fall down those rabbit holes either.
Absolutely. And, and there's such a huge crossover with, I think Ireland really became a focus for that kind of right wing fundamentalism. Now, we always had that element in the north of Ireland, particularly. That has been very much a part of the Christian landscape, I think, in Ireland. The north of Ireland is still colonized, and there's it has all of its own set of issues up there, and and it's not something that we can just kind of write off in any way, us and the rest of the island. And very much my spiritual practice is an all island one. I talk about the island specifically because it's not Ireland, it's my island. And energetically I'm trying to like make that my reality. But yeah, this I think when we started to break this kind of stranglehold that the Catholic Church, and we came to the notice that, well, pure, dear Catholic Ireland, the homeland for many of these kind of global Christian right-wing fundamentalist groups, like we do represent this kind of purity, this homeland, this let's call it what it is, this white, prominently white, prominently Catholic, some kind of fantasy that they have, and it's like the way the diaspora sometimes have this, very, very strange idea of what Irish life and Irish culture are like, dancing at the crossroads in the Aran jumpers and gosh and Bigara and top of the morning to you and all that nonsense, like, which is nothing to do with us. It's like that on steroids, it's like they have this, there's a certain branch of these Christian fundamentalists who have decided that we're some kind of pure homeland who needs to be defended. And unfortunately, that is taking root here. They have been making, as you know, concerted efforts over the last couple of decades to start groups and to agitate here and to spread their vileness. And unfortunately, it is taking hold with a certain element within Irish society. So, and not, from America, from England, from Europe, it's all here. Like we're not able to be free of any of that. So I think your warning and your caution for blending your Christianity is very well timed, Tara, to be honest, because there's more battles coming, I think.
Well, when it came up, it had to be mentioned. Like I'll post a video about maybe native species or native traditions around the likes of Samhain. And to us today, it sounds a bit spooky, it's very interesting, great bit of crack. But I've had people quoting Bible verse at me and telling me I should be burned to death for talking. For talking about things that were done on this island 100 years ago. We're not even talking way back in the pre-Christian mists of time. We're talking 100 years ago. We're talking these people who are posting on my videos we're talking their parents and grandparents.
Mm.
So yeah, it's very interesting. Like, I definitely think it's not organic, as you say, Laura. There's a lot of that, I think, coming from outside. It seems to mirror a little bit the attitude of a certain sector of, like the evangelism you get in the likes of, say, the USA. I definitely also think the Catholic Church is maybe clambering at the minute to try and
Absolutely, yeah.
their constraint as much as they can.
Yeah, and this is not a conspiracy theory by any means. Like, this has actually been proven. When we were doing the repeal the eighth referendum to make health services legal for people with wombs here in Ireland, it was that's the reason that Facebook had to change their whole advertising policy, because there was money being poured in to Ireland from American and English groups and across Europe, I believe, but mostly the American groups. And they were these evangelical fundamentalists, so we're not just imagining this, like, this has been proven, it has been rooted out. But I think a lot of people just don't realize the effect it's having. And unfortunately, there is an element within Irish society who, are racist and are homophobic and are transphobic and are misogynistic, and they're lapping it up, and it's becoming nativized in some corners. And that's what we're against, Tara. And that's what we fight against, So I suppose now, coming back from that a little bit.
How do we get back on topic now?
But it's all part of it, like we would get comments, and you've seen them yourself, in groups and on our Facebook and everything, of people like, oh, I came here for witchcraft, or I came here for paganism, and I don't want politics. Like, you can't be interested in anything Irish and not be interested in the politics, or not at least put up and shut up with Irish people talking about politics and social issues, because we're very well informed, we're very aware of what's going on, and we are not afraid to talk about it ever. So
and also there isn't a single sector of Irish society I could point to and say there's no politics involved in that.
No.
Everything is political, and I suppose for people who are feeling that, where they don't want politics, is to maybe look at exactly why. But I've been at points where I don't want to know anything about politics, and now I do avoid trying to learn anything about politicians at the minute because for them too frustrating. But my studies into politics and law have gone in a different direction because of it. I had to face, before I could kind of get to that point of just being like, right, okay, I've made some kind of peace with the state of things, you have to face how bad things are. So for the people who want to turn away from politics and don't want that to be involved in particularly their Irish pagan practice, I would maybe use that as an opportunity to go inwards and look at why. Is it because, the politics where you're living are so bad that it's painful for you to look at? Maybe some of the, the service, because service is a big part of most pagan practice, whether it's to God, whether it's to the land you're living on, whether it's to community in some form or another, maybe there's something you could do on that front. Maybe it's only something small like writing a letter, but I think completely closing yourself off to that too is maybe just a bit of a missed opportunity. I wouldn't want to judge people too harshly for that, because I know what it's like to get completely burnt out from hearing, successive governments coming in, and it seems like nothing ever gets any better, despite what they say. There don't seem to be any real better options. And then the independents who go in, they get completely steamrolled over, and a lot of them get burnt out. And as a single person going in there, you're pretty ineffectual anyway. So maybe rather than, I don't want to say, oh, everybody should be thinking about politics, but maybe just have a little think about why. Dedicate half an hour to go inwards.
Absolutely. And why people like us who are so involved in Irish paganism and in, Irish witchcraft and all of the aspects that are involved there, like why we are so adamant that we have to talk about social issues and we have to talk about the politics, because it's so integral to what we believe, what we practice, what our reality is as part of this living tradition, you know. So even if you don't want to get involved personally, Tara, you're very gracious. You're very patient. And but
Things
you're right.
like, you know, maybe people might like to go the same way that I'm starting to go now, which is looking into Brehon law, okay? Because and that's I mean, it's environmentalism, I suppose, is really drawing me in at the minute, where I think we can all agree that destroying the environment we live in is not a good idea. Whether you're a political person or not, I'm sure you can see the logic in kind of going, if we just deplete everything, we're all going to die, and that's how that goes. But, you know, and all the campaigns about save the bees, that's cute and it's nice, but under Brehon law, it was law. It was extremely important, and I haven't gone into the entire, you know, tract of beekeeping laws that we had 1,000 years ago under Brehon laws, but they're there, and I'm making my way around to them. You know, care of the land is something that was exclusively, expressly set out in Irish law, going back into medieval times, and, you know, for as long as there have been laws in Ireland. So, you know, for anybody who feels frustrated that some of the campaigns you might see going on, and some of the, I suppose, the greenwashing, we refer to it now, that's going on, and getting frustrated that it's getting us nowhere, look back to how things were done before. You know, there are answers there to be found. There's immense wisdom, and even just for getting on with your community and how to look after your community, and you know, in turn ensuring that you yourself are also looked after as a member of that community. So politics isn't just what happens in your government buildings, you know,
Absolutely.
once a year.
And you know, and that's why I would always call it, like, you know, it's social and political, you know, it's cultural, it's part of the fabric of our society, you know. And yes, politics is part of that, but it's the politics of communities as much as the politics of the land, you know, and the current legal system, which did replace our Brown law system to our detriment, I feel, you know.
And it folded off the British parliamentary system. So there's a whole other conversation to be had about trying to enforce a system of law on a nation whose soul won't necessarily accept it. You know, it's like, to me, you know, the Irish system of laws, and I'll probably get threatened with treason again for saying things like this, but it's like when you do a kidney transplant, and sometimes it works and sometimes the body rejects it. Well, I think rejecting it, and, you know, if you think I'm sort of misguided with that, think about when's the last time somebody Irish, you know, just casually broke the law. You know, laws are kind of arbitrary, especially in certain parts of Ireland. At least that's how they're viewed. So, you know, I mean, you've got all problems with, oh, the jails are full and we can't afford more and all of this. Well, actually, if you go back and look whether or not the way things are being done actually suits us as a nation, you might get some of the answers and possibly solutions as well.
Exactly. And while, you know, that might kind of raise red flags for people, you know, if you're hearing something like the laws are, you know, we can pick and choose or whatever, as part of our rural Irish culture, please don't mishear us, because our social contracts and our community standards and how we take care of each other in our communities are very strict and very ethical. So it's not like lawlessness as such. It's just not those laws. You know, like, people take care of each other, and if something needs doing, if something needs enforcing, it happens, you know. And part of that is your you know, your the honor system, I think, especially in smaller communities, like, the honor system still has a big part to play, you know, because you wouldn't be able to show your face, like, and your ma would be horrified if you did anything. You know?
That's it, and everyone would have her told anyway.
Exactly.
You know?
And your father wouldn't be able to show his face.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, so, like, the social contract and the social legislations, let's call them, are still very strong, and they would be much more in line with the Brehon law system, I feel, you know, than than the actual
absolutely.
law of the land, you know?
You can still feel traces of how things were done back
Mm,
in those times in
mm,
rural life.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
much. I know there's a massive exodus of people moving from urban areas to rural areas at the
yeah,
minute.
yeah.
So, you know, might take a little while to maybe get that back up to where it should be or where
Mm,
it used to be. But certainly the Celtic Tiger, you know, communities didn't necessarily come together more when everybody had money. But I
mm,
think during COVID, actually, in a way, there was a bit of a silver lining on that front because people had to look out for each other. You know,
mm,
people going
yeah.
to get some groceries for each other and things like that. And that's, you know, that's the kind of to me, that's one of the most important things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you're living in the countryside, if you're living somewhere remote, you know, your practice can just be knowing that your neighbor is okay, knowing who they are, and
Mm-hmm.
knowing okay.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And you look out for them when they need it. And they do the same for you. And that's just the way it
Exactly.
works.
Yeah.
Yep. And like living in the country, Tara, like having moved out to, as we've mentioned, the wilds of Leitrim, like you have a lot around you, you know. And the reason that now you had your own YouTube channel, it's Diary of a Ditch Witch. For anybody who's not familiar, we have mentioned obviously Ditch Witchery. We'll link all Tara's stuff below. So make sure you do check out the channel and all of that as well. But we asked Tara in like with the Irish Pagan School as a platform, we never wanted it to be, and I know we say it all the time, but like it was started with the intention of becoming a platform for native Irish voices, you know, and all of our teachers have something very different to offer. I think everybody is coming from quite different situations and experiences and, you know, education and all the rest of it. And it's just turning into such a fascinating slice. And you know, one of the things we had identified was we don't really have anybody doing herbalism. We had one conference talk. I think Anne Bleakley did a talk, but it wasn't even herbalism. It was more folk cures and practices and stuff, you know. I've done a little bit with the Irish magic stuff. But yeah, so you were the obvious choice, Tara. And like your herbalism, like how does that work? Are you like is it ditch witchery? Are you formally trained? We'll talk about this maybe a little bit more in a different video, I think, because there's a lot to get into, and I know we've been here a while yet. But just like what were your early influences and experiences, and kind of what challenges have you faced with incorporating a herbalism practice or a herbalism teaching or learning, I suppose, into the ditch witchery stuff?
Earliest influences, I'll start there,
Mm,
is picking black
mm,
and then mommy making jam out of it. And it was just so delicious. It was such a treat. It was like, I can't believe my mom made that. So
mm,
I grew up with that in me, is that, you know, you can make things from the food around you. And then as I progressed, and of course, I am a child of austerity in Ireland. So just as I was starting to come into adulthood, you know, that whole economic situation went completely tits up. And I was broke. I was
mm,
broke quite a lot of the time. And there were times when it was literally a choice between cat litter and dinner.
mm.
So I have to get the cat litter to get dinner. And I have to say, actually, I lived in Galway for a while, and I think what really got me into regular foraging, I was living right in Galway city centre, but I found a good spot on the Claddagh where I used to go down and pick mussels,
Mm,
and I felt like a queen
mm,
down to eat a dinner of mussels
mm,
in the evening time, which if I went to a local restaurant to buy them, I couldn't afford.
mm,
So I think that was really it, is that I'm aware that there are a lot of other people out there who also has to live with little to no money. So I suppose even from an early stage, I was trying to not just learn for myself, but share the information with
mm,
other people.
mm.
Of course, you have to be careful doing that too, because foraging can be a dicey business if you
Yeah,
don't know what you're doing.
yeah.
But and I suppose that's really one of the major obstacles. And although I'm not running foraging, tours or anything like that just yet, I mean, maybe when I get to know my environment here a little bit better, I might feel confident doing that with people. But is that there's actually not in the areas I've lived in, at least anyway, there wasn't much access to learning about that kind of thing. Like I would always say to people, the best way is to learn in person. If you could take somebody local out with you who knows what they're doing, and they can show you exactly where to pick it, and you really get to intimately know the species that you're working with then at that stage. So there's not an awful lot of that. And I sort of I'm self-taught when it comes to that. I've no formal training, and I don't claim to even be able to cure people's ailments myself. Herbalism. I'm one of these people who, when I'm stuck, I'll give it a go. And it's a lot of the time it's just simple little folk remedies, like Dave stood on a nail there, a rusty nail recently. Now he'd had a recent tetanus shot, so that was good. But it really wasn't, we weren't able to be going to the GP. We'd have to wait weeks for an appointment with a GP in rural Ireland. So it was a matter of us keeping it clean, and it's really just soaking it in salt every day and things like that. So I would have done a lot of that. And then as I started becoming more aware of, environmental depletion as well, I started to branch out and, making like natural homemade cleaning products and things like that. Just trying to live the life as much as I possibly could. Now, at the risk of sounding like a complete hypocrite, when I was sort of forced, due to my housing situation, to move back into the centre of Dundalk town, all of that went out the window. Workload increased massively. My ability to socialise as well was increased, so I made a point of doing more of that. And so I was back to, same old terrible buying, and was poor some of the time too. So back to buying cleaning products in pound shops. And I don't want anyone getting the impression that I'm, Mrs. 100% sustainable. I believe that people who want to do it, doing the best that you can with what you've got is all anybody can expect from you. Finding the things that you can do that so I mean, I would bring that a lot into my foraging when I'm going out now. I mostly do it now for pleasure. I haven't gotten back into trying to do it for medicine for myself yet, but I have a few friends at the minute now making tinctures and things like that, so I might give all that a go. I find that I'm getting tips from that what I have learned about herbalism I've gotten from people who were in other countries. And they weren't necessarily reminding you of things like you're only meant to take 10 to 20% of what's there. I think that's something that is, probably especially important in Ireland, as we were talking about, Laura, the place where in the Brehon laws they've explicitly outlined these kinds of guidelines, which you could fined for not following, and sometimes quite heavily fined too. I don't know if it's the fact that maybe we're such a small island, or we've so many delicate ecosystems here, or whatever it is. But these were things that I kind of had to learn as I was going along here too. And it was a long time before I found Facebook groups where there were Irish people going out and foraging, and I could listen to their stories and their experiences and their tips on how to go out and be the best forager you can be, because you can learn quite a lot from books that don't come from the country that you're working with. There's always so much more to learn, specifically.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
It's not even just the environment and the species growing there, but it's how to approach that. Like people might go out and cut a vase full of the little orchids just because they look really nice. But if you discover how rare those actually are in some parts of Ireland, you might think twice about doing that.
Absolutely.
Whereas in other countries, maybe it's not that big a deal,
Yeah, no, definitely. And, that is definitely what attracted us to you, because we're not a herbal school, we're not a medicinal school. We're interested in those living traditions, and that's exactly what you're describing here, is your lived experience as an Irish person. And obviously, if people can come here and go on a foraging tour with Tine, the Ditch Witch, whenever they appear as an option, we would absolutely encourage people to do that. But of course, like that's not always going to be an option for people. So what we're trying to do in the Irish Pagan School is give people that slice or that connection, that slice of life of actually what it's like to be, trying to live in balance with the Irish environment, with the Irish culture, with the Irish traditions, with the magic, with the energy, with the gods when they pay attention to us. We can't avoid it,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm going to just share the screen here very briefly, Tara, and change over there. So when people show up with the Irish Pagan School, you go to irishpaganschool.com. Now, this is all linked below, but we have the homepage here and some featured courses. But if people just click here on all courses, they can actually go directly to your courses. And, currently you have 2 with us. You can click to author and then just go down to Tara Tine there. And you have 2 courses with us here at the moment. We have Herb Magic in Ireland, an introduction, and Herb Magic at Samhain. And again, Herb Magic rather than Herbalism, because we're looking at the magical, mythical, historical, and practical use of herbs, generally in the Irish tradition, which are first class that you ran there, the introduction, and then specific to Samhain, where there's so much that again is part of these living traditions that's so important when we're talking about the native flora of Ireland, so I do encourage people to have a look at the classes and definitely take them if they're of interest to you. They're available all the time on demand download, and we will be running, I hope, more live classes with you, Tara. So if people want to get on the mailing list, there's loads of free resources and everything down below. And then if you sign up for any of them, they'll put you on the mailing list as well. You get some cool stuff and you get informed when Tara's running a new class. So thank you so much, Tara, for taking the time to lay all that out with us today. Your journey is absolutely fascinating, and
for having me.
Yeah. No, and we'll have to do a part 2, I think, and make sure that we, if anybody has any questions, actually, you can put them below in the comments there, or just say hello to Tara in the comments, and definitely go and check out her channel as well, which is Diary of a Ditch Witch. Okay, thanks a million, Tara.
Bye.
So,